What's going on? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a special back to school brisket and rib smoke out. Stay tuned. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel so you can keep up with the latest greatest from the Smoking Beard. So what you have in front of you is a brisket that I got from Costco, a prime brisket, and I cheated a little bit and I got my St. Louis ribs already seasoned from Costco. These come out really great, so as far as the ribs are concerned for this video, I'm just going to stick those in there when they're ready to go. Let's trim this puppy up so we can get it ready for the smoker. So there's two sides to the brisket. Usually you have the one that's where your meat is exposed, and then you turn it around and you're gonna have one where we have the fat cap. First thing you wanna do is you wanna try to get some of this excess fat out of the way. I had to put my towel underneath. This is gonna help with the board not moving as much. So let's continue. So all we're gonna do here is, like I said, try to get about a 1/4 of an inch of fat cap as much as evenly as possible throughout the whole brisket. If you notice right here, there's very little fat here, but there's some fat here, so I'm gonna try to reduce that a little bit. Right now I'm tackling the point right here. I'm trying to get as much of this fat cap as possible. See all that fat right there? You're gonna try to get to the meat, as close to the meat as possible. The fat that kind of is like a solid type of fat, that's the type of fat that you want to try to get rid of as much as possible. The purpose of removing some of this fat cap is, one, it'll reduce the amount of time you need to cook, and two, it's gonna allow for more of the seasonings to get to your meat. So you got the top fat cap as close to even as possible. And just so you know, this is the reason that you buy prime. Notice all that fat that's trapped in between the meat. That's what's considered marbling. That's what you want on a meat to make it that much softer when you're cooking it. So once you're happy with it, there's another good example of the marbling that I'm talking about right here. That's what you want to see, especially on a prime brisket. The next thing is you want to flip it over. On this part, you really don't want to take too much off of it, because this is all any little fat that's up here is gonna actually protect your meat. But there is this part here, sometimes it's a bigger piece or sometimes it's a smaller piece. This is a pretty small piece for this brisket. I want to trim that as close to the meat as possible, but not all the way down. So you're gonna notice that it's all white, non-rendable fat. This is where you're gonna have your lean meat. This is where we're gonna have your moist meat. So the next step here after you do this is to season it. So I picked up this little seasoning tub at Academy. It was a pretty good deal. I like putting my brisket in here because it keeps most of my counter, not all of it, but most of my counter clean. The next thing you want to do is you want to season this and you want to leave it overnight. What I did is I created my own rub. So I do have a link to that video, which I'll be posting right now. Start with the fat cap and you're gonna season it. So now that I have all my nooks and crannies covered, cover this up with foil paper, put it in your refrigerator and let it marinate overnight. So it's 24 hours later. My brisket has been marinating in the refrigerator overnight. Normally at this point, this is when you turn on your smoker and you set everything up and you start smoking. But for this smoke, I want to do a hybrid type of smoke. I'm still after that elusive smoke ring. So the way that I'm going to try to attempt to get a smoke ring is I'm first going to put this in my barbecue pit, wait for it to get to 140 degrees on the internal temp, and then move it over. This step is not necessary. I just want to try something new, see if this gives me that smoke ring that I've been looking for. So what I did right now is I put my brisket into my barbecue pit. I do have some briquettes going, a bit of briquettes going offside. You know, you don't want to put the brisket on top of, if you're going to do it this method, you don't want to put the brisket on top of the heat source. I put it offside, and I did put a temperature probe in here. I'm gonna monitor it. Once it hits 140, I'm gonna move it over to my smoker. The way to get a smoke ring, the only way to get a smoke ring is through combustion. What you're seeing right now is one of my logs or one of my chunks combusting in there. The interaction between the combustion and the meat, while it's accepting the smoke, will give it a smoke ring. Let's see what this guy looks like after being in the smoker for about 5.5 hours. Got a little bit of a color to it. So I'm gonna pull this guy out and I'm gonna put him in the smoker, in my electric smoker, so I can go ahead and turn in for the night and let my electric smoker do the rest of the work. So I got all sorts of tricks up my sleeve. The next thing is your setup. If you are not going to do the hybrid method the way I am, this is the setup that you want to have when you're going to put your brisket in for the very first time. You want to have your drip pan down here. You want to have your water pan, and you want to also have your fat trapper back here. That's your initial setup. What I also do is I like to, even though I'm already at 140 on the internal temp of the brisket, I also like to still continue to add some smoke. And I've noticed that these Masterbuilt electric smokers, they're pretty good to keep the heat, but very, very difficult for a low and slow type of brisket smoke the way I like. It's hard to get these smokers to smoke the chips. So I ended up purchasing a amazing pellet smoker that allows me to incorporate more smoke during the cook. Now, all the products that you see here, most of them you're going to see them down below on my link. So if you are interested in any of these products, please check out my links, and I have them hyperlinked to Amazon so you can purchase it. But that's it. You just load up your smoke. You load up your brisket. If you're going to put an amazing pellet smoker, you put it in there. You want to close this up. If you do not have an amazing pellet smoker, this is when you would start adding your chips into the little hopper there. The way this is set up over here, I set it up about 20 minutes ago so they could start heating up, but I did set it for 24 hours and I set it at 230. I do recommend getting one of these. This is one of those Bluetooth meat temperature probes. You can hook it up to your phone and it gives you all this data on your phone without having to come outside and check on the meat. So we're back. We're at about 12 hours into the smoking of the brisket. Let's see what this guy looks like after about 12 hours. So we got some good color going to it. Now it's at this time, I'm about 5 to 6 hours before I'm going to pull the brisket out. The brisket right now is at about 183, so I'm going to try to hit it to about 195, maybe 198. But I'm going to start my rib portion of the smoke. So when you're going to do the ribs, it's recommended you do the 3-2-1 method, meaning 3 hours unwrapped, the way you see them here. Then we're going to go to 2 hours, which is 2 hours of foil, wrapped in foil, and then the last hours to stiffen them up. So for right now, all you do is you load up your ribs, you load up some more of your chips, and you set your timer for 3 hours. So we'll see you guys in about 3 hours. Oh, one last thing I forgot. The temperature, you can go between 220 and 230. Right now I'm hovering at about 230. So 3 hours later, this is where we're at. Our ribs are getting a nice little color to them. At this point, you pull out the ribs and you want to wrap these in foil, and you also want to add a little bit of a sauce to it. This is a half and half barbecue sauce and apple juice. You just do a 1-to-1 ratio here. Mix it up. We're going to wrap these ribs, put a little bit of this sauce, and stick them into the smoker for another 2 hours. truth. My brisket has already hit the 185. Actually, it went up to 188. So I'm gonna turn this off. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna pull this out. I'm gonna wrap it, and then we're going to let it sit in a cooler for 2 hours. So this is what the ribs look like after 2 hours in the foil. I unwrapped them. Now I'm gonna stick them back in the smoker. It is at this time. I know that it's a 3-2-1 method. The one being you're gonna leave it in there for an hour, but the longer you leave it in there, the stiffer your crust is gonna be on the outside. So if you like it a little bit softer, I would leave it maybe 20-30 minutes. If you like a stiff crust on it or a stiff bark on it, I would leave it for the entire hour. You can also add barbecue to this. You can base it with barbecue if you want at this time, but just be careful. Don't put it barbecue and leave it in there for too long, because the sugar in the barbecue sauce will actually start to burn your meat. But I'm gonna stick these back in for about another 30 minutes, an hour, and then we'll see what they look like at the end. You always want to look for the grain. Where is a brisket going? If I look at this grain, it's telling me that the brisket fibers, there's some brisket fibers right there. These fibers are going this way, so when I cut, I have to cut against the grain. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start cutting, and we'll see if we get that smoke ring that I've been after. So this is the lean part right here. As you can see, I can't even take it off without it falling apart. So it tells you it's very tender. We're looking at that smoke ring, and I did get that smoke ring, which is awesome. The only thing is that it's only on the bottom part, and that's because on this top part the fat was still blocking it, so it didn't allow for that smoke ring to happen. But it did get a good nice little a smoke ring on it, so I'm very happy with this. We're gonna have to go ahead and cut this up and see what it tastes like. So we got to that part on the brisket, and we stopped so that you guys can see this. You have your lean part, and then you have your moist part up here. The problem is that if you continue cutting it the same way, the top part will be cut incorrectly and the bottom will. So what you want to try to do here is you want to run your knife and try to separate this as so this is my moist part over here. We're gonna continue cutting the lean part, and then Alright guys, so now that we got to the moist part of the brisket, this one also has fibers. If you remove this a little bit, you'll notice right here that my fibers are going this way. So we're going to go ahead and cut against. At some point here, there's a ball of brisket that kind of just goes all over the place. Try your best to go against the grain as much as possible. But to be honest with you, if done correctly, this thing should just be falling apart on us. If the lean part was falling apart on us, I'm more than sure this one's going to be falling apart on us too. So we're just going to go ahead and continue cutting. This one, this one just kind of, we can leave those as little chunks. I like that chunk right there, and that one, leave it as a little chunk. All right, so it's as simple as that. This is about a 12-pound brisket. All right, so now we're down to our ribs. Remember, the method we used here was 3-2-1, 3 hours open or bareback, 2 hours wrapped in foil, and the last hour, and to be honest with you, these I only left about 30 minutes because I have the stiffness that I want on the outside, but you can leave it up to an hour. The last thing you want to do here is you want to go ahead and cut it every 3 to 4 ribs. Now these ribs run at a little bit of an angle, so you just gotta find where that angle is and just trying to cut in between. So there you go, those are your ribs. We did lose a couple of bones on the way over, but that's fine. This one has a couple of bones missing over here, but we're gonna go ahead and continue cutting. 1, 2, 3, 4, we're gonna cut again, and probably one more time, and break these ribs off. But other than that, if you look at the color of these ribs, these are perfect ribs. There's a lot of receding going on. The ribs are falling apart here on the top. I bet you ought to do this. Just an illustration. Look, I'm not even making any force. The bone is coming right off. I mean, these are fall off the bone, clean bone. All right, so this has been the Smoking Beard, bringing you another smoking tutorial. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. But once again, thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you guys.